Thank you.
Brittany on. Let's see.
Hello.
Hey, Brittany, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Okay, so you have an extra 5 minutes, so you don't have to rush through your presentation.
Excellent. That is like a win for a Monday already.
Look, that's what my job is. Okay, so if you have a slide deck, you can share it right now. I'm gonna mute myself and turn off my camera, but the floor is all yours.
Perfect. Let me get this PowerPoint. All right, everyone see that?
Yep, you're good to go.
Perfect. Hi, Kay. Thank you. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Make It Memorable, Mastering the Art of the Candidate Experience. I'm just going to figure out, perfect. I'll take a moment to introduce myself. So my name is Britanie Pelican. I've listed a few kind of fun facts that you can peruse at your leisure about my family as well. And so wanted to kick off by sharing that I've been in and around talent acquisition for over 16 years. Industries such as retail, manufacturing, technology, and that ranges from Fortune 500 companies to startups. I ran my own agency. I've played the roles of sourcer, full cycle recruiter, program manager, to name a few. I've pretty much done everything ranging from campus hiring all the way to executive search. So all that to say, I have had time to really hone the craft of delivering a great best-in-class candidate experience. And so today we're going to scratch the surface, like just a little bit, because honestly, I could probably spend 2 days worth digging into the content related to delivering a great candidate experience, but we have just 20-ish minutes. So we'll dive right in. All right. So in a recent New York Times study, Americans valued more having a fulfilling job than several of these on the list. From being a good neighbor, being involved in the community, even having enough time for yourself. I wanted to showcase this especially because I want to start by sharing the why it's important to give and deliver a great candidate experience. I realized as I was researching this study in particular, we look to our jobs not only as a source of income, but a source of purpose and identity, of happiness, and even community. And so many of us, myself included, feel a sense of place and belonging more from the connections that we have in our workplace than we do from any other network in our lives. And so when someone makes a decision to make a move, no question that it's a critical life decision, and they value the fulfillment that they're going to get within this job very highly. So there's an issue here, right? Those of us who have been in the industry a long time, those that I often say, like, no one usually goes to school to become a recruiter or a sourcer, but we all have our great story of how we landed within this industry. And if there's someone who went to go become one right out of college, intentionally, I would love to meet you. So please, I would love to hear your story. But regardless of whether you sit in a sourcer position or a recruiter position, there's a stereotype out there that we are transactional, that we're all about the hire and not about the human. And so the single greatest way for us to debunk this stereotype is to treat your candidates like the humans they are, not widgets, not a transaction. So regardless of whether you're working in a high volume or, for example, an executive recruitment space, I highly encourage you to take some of these critical components today and infuse them into how you deliver your candidate experience. So for me, I say there are 3 critical components to delivering a best-in-class candidate experience. And the first starts with mindset. So for me, it requires getting into the user mindset in terms of many of us may be part of companies where we are in consumer-obsessed industries, where we say we have to get it right, where we're living in the shoes of our end consumer and delivering to their needs. Same thing. I think we need to start with that end consumer mindset in mind to say, what's most important to them? How do they want to feel throughout this experience? I would love to see a raise of hands of like, how many people love going through a job search? I've been doing a lot of transition coaching through the years, and not many people find it fun, but it can be, right? And we as recruiters have that ability to deliver on that type of experience. The second is it starts at the very beginning with the role intake. From that first conversation with your hiring manager, that's when this candidate experience starts to take shape. You get a feel from the hiring manager of who they are as a leader and can really gain an understanding of why someone would want to work for this leader, why someone would want to leave maybe their great company and come to this organization. You know, what are the things that you personally would want to know about the team, the leader, and the company? Make sure that you don't leave that intake without those critical pieces of information answered. It will help you start to craft a really amazing story that you can tell throughout the interview process. And then the last is storytelling. So through stories, we as humans decide how we feel about something. Knowing the importance of that we put in all of our jobs, to that study I mentioned earlier, we want to strive to be able to create this level of intrigue and engage these candidates, even sometimes pulling at the heartstrings depending on the role. And through those stories, we will help build a relationship that is exactly that. It's a relationship, not a transaction. So let's get to the meat. How do we actually do this? So the first thing, be able to deliver a unique value proposition. What is that to the role? Tell them why they want to join the organization, regardless of whether they're an inbound applicant or a passively engaged prospect. If you're thinking, you know, how do I even come up with this unique value proposition? Well, take a breath, because the key to success is knowing that it comes from the hiring manager. You could explicitly just ask this question: what would you describe as the unique value proposition of this role? But I lean towards a different prospect in prompting. I try in my role intakes to have them have as much air cover as possible, because in that conversation, I tease out all these exciting details about the role. So I ask things like, what does success look like in the first year for this role? Or why would someone want to leave their company and come work within this team? So recently I was working on a VP of information security search, and after prompting my hiring manager during the role intake, I learned that we were up-leveling this role from a senior director to a VP level title. We felt very strongly about how our compliance and risk expertise was doing within the organization, but there was a skill set gap, and we needed to have a leader who could really raise the bar on security. And so as we were pivoting to a much more financial services company. And so this role would ultimately be the most senior security leader across our enterprise, and they would be responsible for raising this bar for us. They would have direct accountability, direct ability to influence and drive the security direction of where we were headed for all of our customer brands, and that around both our employees as well as our partners. And so the career path for this role was moving right into the C-suite. Very exciting role. And ultimately, this leader was going to have the opportunity to help position our company for the future. Now, that's exciting, right? That is a role that I know I can sell. And heck, after I walked away from that intake, I was like, if I had the skill set, I would want this role. And that's how you want to walk out of your intake, knowing all the amazing intel that your hiring manager knows, having lived in the business every day, so that you can tell a story and that you have as much information to be dangerous in those conversations with your first candidates. You want to be able to leverage that to develop an amazing, unique value proposition. All right, so next step is telling your story. I want you to be able to craft your personal story of why you joined the organization and why you stay. So most recently, I moved in from a consultant role to a full-time role with Zillow Group, and I share with all of my candidates that I was skeptical to join at first. At the time, I was running my own agency. I loved my clients. I never thought I was going to go back to corporate and go in-house. But a dear friend of mine said there was something special that was happening at Zillow, that we were modernizing the American dream, that it wasn't just about Zillowing your next dream home in bed before you laid your head down, but that we were working to get more people into a home than ever before. And so helping to get that goal across the finish line, that was one of the huge impetuses for me to be able to move into that role. And so it's also the reason I stay. It's very mission driven. So I want to highly encourage you to weave your personal story and into the highlights of where the company is at today, where they're headed, what might that growth trajectory be, and how this role ultimately fits within that. It's a very critical component to delivering a great candidate experience. And check oh, you're sweet, Kay. All right, so next up is getting to know your candidate. Seems very simple, but oftentimes, as we mentioned earlier, this can be a very transactional business, or we can have the stereotype that we are. And so we absolutely want you to be able to take the time to get to know your candidate. So what type of work gives them that fire in their belly, excited to go to work every day? I want to know that about my candidates, because ultimately I want to be able to say, I'm not going to shove a round peg into a square hole. And I have to feel really good if I am, whether they're an inbound applicant or a passive candidate. I want to feel really good if I'm taking them from a great company at a great job and bringing them into a new organization, right? Like, at the end of the day, my job comes down to timing and karma, but the thing I can control is the candidate experience. And that to me is utmost importance. So also I want to understand, how do they occupy their time? What are some of their hobbies? I want to be able to understand the full nature of who the candidate is, because that also plays well into, do their core values, their personal core values, align with the company's core values? Gallup, Deloitte has done these surveys for, I think, about over 3 decades. 87% of the workforce is disengaged at work. And I would argue with the pandemic, those numbers probably look a bit higher, more dismal. So how do we make sure there's alignment there? By being able to take the time to really get to know that candidate. So I mentioned earlier about the VP of InfoSec role. I was speaking about, I learned that my candidate, she played collegiate soccer, which I did as well. So we bonded over that. She also is a jiu-jitsu world champion, so she's super badass. She's got 2 puppies, which I got to meet during our video interviews. She's also getting married soon. So walking away, granted this is at an executive level, but I was able to curate a gift basket that reflected that how well I knew her and how well we had gotten to know each other over the course of the interview process. So I took the time, and that meant the world to her, because she felt she was set up for success, but she also knew where she was headed and the type of role that she was walking into, and had all the information necessary to make that decision, which goes back to how much we value being fulfilled within our jobs. That was a tough move for her to make, having been somewhere previously for 7 years. So it was a big decision for her. All right, moving on. Be an advocate. I think this is probably one of the most important. Being an advocate for your candidate throughout the process. You are the lens into the organization. You need to be able to gain their trust by setting them up for success. And so there are 3 things that comes down to for me. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Share what the next steps are. Provide necessary materials to help set them up for success in the interview process. Take the time to prepare them for their interviews. Make sure that they understand that you're their guide throughout this process. I often turn to, what are the tools, technology, even the systems that I have at my fingertips to help me build and deliver that great candidate experience. So for example, I have a reading material email that I send out after every cell call that I have with a passive candidate, so that they can read information not only about the company, but core values. And it's curated based on what I think is most exciting at that moment in time in the company. So it does take a little bit of effort making sure that that information stays up to date and current, but it's worth it. I have another template that I send out after I do any recruiter interview to get them excited, because I always say, sleep on it. Let's talk about it tomorrow. If you can't stop thinking about me in this conversation, then let's make sure that we have a next conversation, because ultimately it is a courtship, right? It's kind of like speed dating when they have other interviews happening at one time. How do we get as much information to them that they can make a good decision of whether they want to continue forward, because it is mutually beneficial and mutual interest for us to continue in the hiring process. I also partnered really closely with I call her my recruiting scheduling wizard. She's our coordinator, to include verbiage in any on-site or now virtual interview confirmation to tell candidates that I will be following up within a week post interviews. Now, yes, that sounds like a ton of time, but it builds in a buffer so that when life happens, which it does, whether a debrief gets delayed, whether interviews gets pushed back, any of those numerous things that could potentially happen that allow us, we need more time to get through the process, build that in. So at least that buffer is available, that they know within a week I will get back to them. I always try usually 48 hours, but to build that in so they feel supported and that they're being communicated to. I would always rather them say, Britanie, I have all the information you need. You don't need to continue reaching out to me, than them saying, I have no idea what's going on in the process. Where am I at? This has been a terrible candidate experience. So back to my VP of Information Security candidate, because I had taken the time, as did the rest of my team, to really hone in on that unique value proposition, because I was able to share my story of why I joined and why I stay. And also because I took the time to get to know who she was and keep her apprised of every step of the way, we were able to get a verbal accept on the spot and close this role in 9 weeks. I mean, it was a huge feat for us. Our hiring manager, when we first kicked off the search, which Kay can attest to, and I said, we're going to hire this person in 90 days, he laughed and he was like, nice try. And I'm like, no, we will. And so because of that communication, because we took the time to know this role so intimately and really be able to tell a compelling story around that unique value proposition for the role, we were able to walk away really successful. So additionally, after our candidate's first day, she took the time to recognize our team and the benefit of her candidate experience. So she shared that with our team, and I wanted to just show you all how she acknowledged us for giving an incredible experience and that we went the extra mile. Now, for me, that's just bare minimum, right? That's every candidate gets this experience, because I want to give them, so to speak, the answers to the test, because they still have to show up and perform, right? Me being able to clue them into what our values are and to provide guidance and be an advocate through the process, that only benefits both of us in being able to close a role and make sure they're the right candidate for this opportunity. So my goal, as always, is to move through the process and be able to do one of these. After we wrap up a search, because that, to me, there's no greater compliment than a candidate to tell us that we delivered a great experience, and for our team to celebrate in that shared success, because all the way from research to closing out the candidate and day one onboarding, like that entirety of the process, the candidate feels what it's like to be a part of the company, and it's a great indicator. So I'm sure many of you have had experiences, and I don't know, I've even gone through, I never say no to interviews because I always want to benchmark and see what else is out there. But I'm sure many of you have been a part of a process where you go through, you commit 5 hours to interviews, and then you never hear back. And you followed up a couple of times and you never hear back. So encourage you, make sure that you're leveraging those systems and technology to help make your life as easy as possible as it relates to communication. But those candidates, they're watching, and those communication touch points are an indicator of how they're viewing the company, right? We're kind of that first gateway, first touch point into their experience. And so it's a big one for sure. There's a lot that rests on our shoulders. So now I know I'm ahead of schedule a bit, but I want to be able to leave 5 minutes to answer any questions that you may have, stories, comments, anything at all. So let's open it up, and I'm going to stop share so I can see all your faces.
Okay, no questions have come in yet, but that was amazing. Thank you, Brittany. I really appreciate it. Let's see. If we don't have any questions, we can always have people jump in and start earlier because I know everybody's wanting to end their Mondays early.
No problem.
Let me check both sources of where we are. I'm going to mute myself because you're probably going to hear an echo, so give me 1 second.
Okay. Let's see, one popped up. There have been a lot of hire losses. What is your best advice to reduce hire losses? I'm assuming as far as Srinivasa, can you clarify that? Do you mean you've extended an offer, they've accepted, and then they never start because they've accepted another competing offer? Okay. Yes. Okay, so I have a ton of experience in this. It was back in the early 2000s. At that time, I was working for Target, and we had opened a sister headquarters in India, in Bangalore. And at the time, the market was super hot. And so candidates, they were asking for 300% raises from their previous companies. We were even requesting bank statements. I mean, it was a hot market, which is what we're in today, right? It's a very hot market, and a candidate has the power, no question. We developed a keep warm strategy. So once they had accepted, we figured out what the time distance was between their acceptance and their start date. And we developed a keep warm strategy to have multiple touch points between now and start date to ensure that they came on board. So that can look like emails, updates for the team, coffee chats with the current peers, skip level with the leader above them to have a coffee chat. Think about creative ways to keep them engaged between now and when they start, and that significantly reduced the amount of times that we had someone not show up on day one. It takes some time and energy and effort. There's even things that those are some, non-monetary things that you can do that don't have an expense to it. Other things are a gift basket that's really thoughtful of, things that lend themselves to what you learned about them through the interview process that do have a price tag attached. But there's several different ways, even exciting. If something came out in the news that you want to share with them about the company, or maybe the CEO did a podcast, sending that link. It's making sure that you develop very thoughtful touch points throughout that time period between when they accept and when they start day one. So that's my best recommendation. Feel free to reach out with other ideas, but that we saw a significant decline in not having folks bail before day one.
Awesome. Okay, and another question we have is from Carrie, who's speaking next, but how have you had hiring managers join you in creating a great candidate experience?
Say that again. Sorry, I was reading some of Srinivasa's follow-ups. Can you say that again? Sorry.
How have you had hiring managers join you in creating a great candidate experience?
Oh, for sure. So I think they're as critical as I am, right? I mean, because it's about creating that environment for the team. So I've had conversations with the hiring managers to say, like, for example, maybe an offsite is coming up. Can we include them? What information would be critical for them to know ahead of time walking into maybe an upcoming offsite? Being really thoughtful about what business priorities are coming up. And how that they can get to know the team a little bit better. For example, at Zillow, they utilize an assessment called Insights. I've had hiring managers share out the insight colors for the team so that they can understand who the team is and how to communicate with them. So there's some really creative ways, and hiring managers are usually very on board, especially as you look at retention. They know that this hire took potentially 9 weeks and a ton of energy. How do we make sure we're starting the onboarding process and retention process from day one? So absolutely include those hiring managers.
Awesome. And then did you see the follow-up for the question that you answered?
Yes. So I saw Srinivasa ask, does keep warm also include hiring managers? Absolutely. Do you think goodies should be sent before onboarding or after onboarding? I always say sometimes it depends on what's available within the budget. I always like to say a welcome basket before they start is super exciting. And then if the team wants to do something thereafter, great. But I think coming from the TA recruitment function, that welcome basket, because we've built and usually cultivated a really strong relationship, it goes a really long way. So I think it depends on the role and the length of time that you've been, the candidate's been in process as well. Sometimes after onboarding makes sense. I'd say it depends.
Okay, awesome. Well, that is all the time that we have for you, Britanie, but thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Do you put in the chat where everybody can find you as well?
Yes, I will put my LinkedIn profile on there that you can link into. And yes, looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Thanks,
So
Danielle.
reach out.
Britanie, sorry. Thank you, Britanie.
Bye.
Okay, now I'm going to bring Carrie to the stage.